In this video, I am going to look at a game I played last Tuesday in a Sussex League match for Horsham 1 against Lewes 1. The match was played at Horsham. I was on board too. I had the white pieces and was up against Peter Farr, a familiar opponent. I started with knight f3. This move demands some explanation, as recently I have been playing e4. The reason I chose to play knight f3 instead is that I was expecting to play Lewes Buckland, who invariably chooses c6, the Caro-Can defence, and I had something prepared against that. However, Peter invariably chooses e6, the French defence, a complicated line for which I was not ready. I therefore decided to go for the more cautious knight f3. Peter favours the modern Benoni against d4, so knight f3 could prove tricky, as it is easy for black to get move ordered. He chose knight f6, and after white played the flexible c4, he chose c5. This is an attractive option for black players who are worried about move order tricks, since it rules out an immediate transposition. However, it does mean that black needs to master one of the defensive systems in the symmetrical English, none of which are entirely simple. After knight c3, e6, g3, knight c6, bishop g2, d5. It was clear that black was aiming for either the Tarrasch or the semi-Tarrasch. After c takes d5, e takes d5, d4 transposes to the Tarrasch defence. Black preferred knight takes d5, and after castles bishop e7, now d4 castles knight takes d5, e takes d5 is the recommended move order, but I chose knight takes d5, e takes d5, d4 castles leading to the same position. Play has now transposed into the semi-Tarrasch defence. This was a line which I had looked at many years ago, but it had not occurred much when I was a regular one knight f3 player. Fortunately, I was able to remember a reasonable way to play against it. Play went d takes c5, bishop takes c5, bishop g5, attacking the queen, and now black has a tricky decision to make. f6 is the most common choice, but rather weakening. Another option is queen d7, which looks unorthodox, but is actually not too bad, as at least it doesn't weaken black's pawn structure. Black chose the counter-attacking queen b6. Now grabbing the pawn with queen takes d5 gives black compensation after bishop e6, which seems to have worked out fine for him in practice. I had a feeling that it was not a good idea and not the recommended move, so I chose to move my rook instead. Rook c1. This prevents queen takes b2, as the bishop on c5 would be hanging. Black now defended the pawn with bishop e6. Now, queen c2 at once is the recommended move and probably best. However, I wanted to prevent knight b4 first, so chose a3. However, black now drove back my bishop with h6, bishop d2, and secured himself against b4 with a5. After queen c2, threatening the bishop on c5, black retreated with bishop e7. I now decided to secure the d4 square with e3, as I was concerned about black pushing d4. After rook on a to c8, there was an unfortunate opposition of black's rook against my queen, which I hurried to get out of over the next few moves. Bishop c3, queen a6. Black now intended to push on the queen side with b5, so I arranged my pieces to impede that. Rook on f to e1, b5, queen e2. The b pawn was now pinned, so black acted to unpin it. Queen b7. Now black was threatening b4, so I decided to swap the knights to neutralise the threat. Knight d4, knight takes d4, bishop takes d4. Although black has an isolated pawn, there does not seem any way to go after it now, so the position is roughly level. Queen d7, queen d2, b4, a takes b4. Now, bishop takes b4 is met by bishop c3, which is probably fine for black. However, he chose instead a takes b4, which is perfectly reasonable, of course. I decided to block the further advance of the b pawn with b3. This leaves black's dark squared bishop less active than it would be should his pawn advance to b3, freeing the b4 square. Black decided to simplify with rook takes c1, rook takes c1, rook c8. h4. This was useful to avoid any back rank issues. Bishop f8, rook c2. White wanted black to be the one to concede the c-file when exchanging rooks. Rook takes c2, queen takes c2. The players now moved their pieces around for a bit before agreeing to a repetition. Bishop f5, queen c1, queen d6, king h2, bishop e7. Black hoped for bishop takes h4, but white did not give him the chance. Bishop h3, queen e6, bishop g2, queen d6, bishop h3, queen e6, bishop g2, queen d6. Black offered a draw which white accepted. Neither side could see a way to make progress.